Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge, and welcome to what I think is going to be a maybe eye-opening video for some people and maybe not surprising at all. I don't know, we're going to see what happens here. But yeah, I got this video idea from a post that I put on my YouTube story. Yes, I'm going to try to utilize that if I can. I don't know. YouTube wants us to jump through hoops and I want to try to do it, but also girls got a lot of balls juggling, you know, and I'm juggling a lot of balls. I don't know, however the saying goes, but I really liked this idea. And so the video idea someone gave me was favorite and least favorite book by an author. And so I was like, wow, that's brilliant. So last night I put up a question box on my Instagram and asked people to name an author that they would like to know. And I got the typical authors I thought I would, so that was really exciting. But I picked the first, well, it ended up being 18 because that's how many fit on 2 pieces of paper when I did it. That's how literally, it wasn't scientific. I was going to do between 10 and 15, and I ended up doing 18, which I know I could do 20, but this is what we're doing. I have 2 pages of authors, and I have my best and worst book by the person for me, or to be more politically correct, favorite and least favorite. Some of these, it really is a matter of like the one I love the most and the one that I just isn't my favorite, and some of them it's books I actively hate, so I'll tell you which ones that is when we get there. But some of these authors, although I haven't read a ton of their books, so you know, I'm only able to choose out of the few that I've read. And then there was some authors that I got that I have only read one book or I haven't read them at all. And a couple that it made me laugh, people's reactions. Like, I've never read Colleen Hoover. I've never read Mariano Zapata. I've only read one book by Ella Mays. And then there was another couple, but I took the thing down right away because your story stays up for 24 hours. And once I had over 50 responses, I turned it off because a lot of them are repeats, you know, that's how it goes. But yeah, let's go ahead and dive in. And I'm gonna go in order that the people said them. So there's no particular order by author, but it isn't gonna be a surprise, some of them. So I think I'll start with my favorite. I think I'll start with my favorite with each one because people will probably know. Like, I don't think it's gonna be a surprise for most of these which my favorite book by the author is, but then I'll tell you my least liked book. So my favorite book by Pam Godwin is Sea of Ruin. This is my beautiful Mystic box cover. I absolutely adore it. I have one coming from the Embers book box too that I'm very excited for, but this is Sea of Ruin. This is a polyamorous relationship. A little bit of a spoiler there, but I don't care. It's been out for many years at this point. We're actually going to be reading this book for Rake Appreciation Society in November for our 2-year anniversary. For our anniversaries, Crystal and I are picking books that really kind of like brought us together. And this was the first book we ever buddy read together. And yeah, I'm so happy that a book box did a historical romance, and it's my favorite. But this is about a female pirate named Bennett who has a husband named Priest who is also a pirate, and there is a pirate hunter named Ashley Cutler who is coming after both of them. And this book involves her being captive of Ashley Cutler and also her maybe falling for him and some sexcapades along the way. Pam Godwin is a universally dark romance across the board. She has different levels of dark. This one is very dark for a historical, but it's absolutely glorious. This copy is fantastic. Bury me with this. It's gorgeous. But this is one of my favorite books of ever, all time, full stop. It's absolutely beautiful, precious, fantastic. Yeah, I love it so much. I can't. So yeah, absolutely. I can't talk this long about every book. We'll be here forever. Now, What is my least favorite book by Pam Godwin? So Pam is one of the authors that I have done a deep dive for. So some of these authors I'll maybe link it up above if I have done that, if I remember to. But I also have a playlist that is all my deep dives. And there is one book that definitely stands out as my least favorite, and it's mostly because this book was not for me. And that's going to be Blood of Eve. This is the second book in the Eve trilogy. This is a romantic horror. The third book does have an HEA, but the second book most definitely does not. And there was a choice that Pam makes in this book that I obviously will forgive her because it's not like this was my favorite series to begin with, but I raged about this book so hard. Like, I cried to Tiffany from Neverland Pixie and from Tiff Talks Pages for hours, and to Jessen for hours, because I was so upset because this didn't have an HEA at the end of the second book. It had something happen that I never would have expected from Pam, and that I don't expect to happen in any of my romances. Now, this was, I believe, Pam's first trilogy she did, and so she wasn't fully set into being any kind of writer. You know, she will tell you on interviews, you know, she says it on the interview on my channel, and she's said it when she's been interviewed on other people, she didn't know what type of writer she was going to be yet. And so this book doesn't fit into the romance genre. Doesn't have an HEA. And I hated it for that. I gave this 2 stars. I ranted about it endlessly. I despise this book. So it was actually pretty easy to pick my least favorite, but everything else by her is honestly 4 stars or above, including the other books in this series even. Yeah, this book is heaven. It's absolute heaven. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. All right, the next author up was Gianna Darling. And my favorite book / duet by her, she has a lot of duets and trilogies, and so I actually just grabbed the first or the second one because I really like the second book in it, but I love the duet equally, and that's the Anti-Heroes in Love duet. See, I just left the other one on my shelf because you can't tell, but I have a lot of books around me for this video. So this is the Anti-Heroes in Love duet. This is about Dante and Elena, and they're my favorite couple that she has written. They really are. I love them, and even more so after rereading Dead Man Walking, which I thought was my favorite book of hers. But then these books came out, and I love these even more. This is a mafia romance between a lawyer who is trying to help get him out of trouble and a mafia boss who is sunshine somehow. You know, I really love the unconventional. I really love when the woman is the grump and the hero is sunshine. And that doesn't mean he's not a badass, that he won't break some kneecaps or cut off someone's hand. But with Elena, he is joy, and he helps her find joy and acceptance. And I really love this duet quite a bit. Keep talking, Jen. The book that I dislike the most by her, because I hate these tropes so much, is actually The Affair. So I never finished this trilogy, and I never will, so please don't ask. This book involves cheating, and it involves cheating on Elena, which, the way it's explained, and I understand it rationally, if that didn't happen, if Elena doesn't break up with that person, she can't be with Dante. I get it. But I just hated it. I hated it. And these two meet on a vacation, and they have an affair. And then when they get back, she discovers that, oh, not only did I have an affair, which she knew she was having an affair with the man, but it's with my sister's fiance. And no. So I read the novella, The Affair, but I refused to finish this trilogy. Even though it's some people's favorite, it's not for me. And Gianna likes to push those envelopes and be taboo and do that, and I think it's great, but not for me. All right, next up, someone asked for T.L. Swan. Again, we know it's The Takeover. Another book that's my all-time favorite. And I know why a lot of people are picking these. They want to know my least favorite by the authors that I love so much. So I won't talk long about this one at all. I actually recently just reread this book because a patron picked this one. So I had the joy of annotating it, and I've literally written something on almost every page because I love it so much. And yeah, I freaking love this. This is a widow with 3 sons and a businessman, and they have a one-night stand, and then it leads to happily ever after. Love it. The book that I actually like the least by T.L. Swan, and I think, I mean, I don't know. I don't hear people debate her books a ton. I've actually have read all of her books except for 2 of them, and one of them I'm waiting to read because she's going to be writing another book that connects with it, supposedly. She never has. And the other one, I think, I can't remember why, but anyway. So the one I like the least is actually Stanton Bliss. So this is part of her, I think this was her first series. I actually have the other 2, but this is a taboo romance between 2 cousins, supposedly. And the reason why is this series, of which I believe there are 4 books, and then there are other books that connect with this because she has a Stanton world and like all of them connect. I mean, honestly, I believe all of her books take place in the same world. Like, for sure, The Takeover is connected with her Italian books and her Mr. books. Like, I know those exist. But yeah, this series, like, it was it was a series I was reading when I was reading kind of like incest or taboo stuff then, and I had heard that TL had this one that was, but it's that kind of couple where they break up and get back together and break up and get back together and hurt each other and get back together like over and over again. And by the time I read Stanton Bliss, I was fucking over that. And so this one's probably my lowest rated TL Swan, but it is one of her earliest books, and it just has tropes that I don't love. And the writing is like, meh, like a lot of TL's writing that is outside of Montlake isn't the best. Like, I don't feel like it gets edited at the same level, which makes sense because Montlake is Amazon's imprint and they do a lot more. So, least favorite of that. Then someone asked for Carrie Ann Cole. So, I've actually only read like 4 books by Carrie Ann Cole, 5 maybe. I've read The Torn and Tide, and I read like 3 books in the Ashes and Embers series, and that's it. I don't enjoy her writing that much. Torn and Tide are probably my favorites of hers, but my favorite one, and this might shock people, I don't know, I like Tide the most. I know Torn just really works for some people, and I don't dislike it. It's a book I would probably want to reread. I do have the beautiful Mystic Box edition for Torn, so I do want to reread that at some point, but that one just didn't quite work for me. But Tide, which is a girl who had been kept captive, like she literally had been kidnapped and kept captive, she escapes from a serial killer. I think he's a serial killer. And our hero, who is this mute who like lives in the woods, he actually finds her and he brings her home. And then years later, she comes back to see him again and they start this relationship. And I liked that one the best of her books, honestly. I really did. I liked the healing that happened in that story and the struggles the hero was going through in that one. Now, the one I liked the least is Vandal. I didn't like the setup of this one at all. That this is one where like the hero is responsible for the heroine's husband's death, and they end up, through some trickery of his, they end up in this BDSM relationship together, and he's trying to use it to help heal her, but like she isn't fully aware of how they're connected. And it made me feel ick, like every time she was submitting to him, because she's submitting to him without the full knowledge the whole time, and it just made me feel ick that it was happening. So yeah. Then someone asked about Stacy Reid, which is great. I'm slowly working my way through hers, but I think I've read about 10 of her books. She has a lot more indie books than you'd think, and I am making my way through those. So my favorite book is going to be her most recent book. I really enjoyed A Matter of Temptation. I really, really liked it. I mean, I also really love My Darling Duke, like I absolutely do. But this one, these characters, Mina and Simon, they just worked so well for me. Mina actually goes to duel Simon because her brother is supposed to duel him, and she goes undercover as her brother. And Simon figures it out and then asks her to work with him to pay off her brother's debt. And he just finds her fascinating, and this hero falls head over heels for her and is there to help her through some struggles in her past and all that stuff. And I loved it. I loved it so much. And then this one is definitely one where, like, I have a least favorite, but I've enjoyed everything I've read by her. Like, there's no big red flags. There's no nothing that, like, super pissed me off or anything. It honestly, like, is her Wicked Marquess. I just didn't like the hero's motivation for this one. Honestly, I don't remember a ton of it, but it was the lowest rated of hers that I had. This one was very sexy. Like, I know it was really steamy, and I liked that part of it. But I know, like, Nicholas, I believe, like, he would climb in her rooms, and she claims that it was her bedroom that he'd come in, and then they end up meeting at night sometimes. I don't know. I don't remember the total details. This one came out a couple years ago, I think. Yeah, this was a 2021 release in January. Okay. But I didn't like his reasoning for not wanting to marry her right away. I think that's what it was. And his revenge plot was, like, suicidal and very frustrating. That's what I remember. It's been a while, like I said, and I don't hate this. I still gave it 4 stars, but when the other book is a very high 5-star, that's what you run into, right? Okay, Tessa Dare was the next one. Another author that I have genuinely enjoyed everything she's read. So going through my Goodreads to see what I rated stuff, it was really hard to find one that I didn't like. But my favorite is still always going to be the first book of hers that I read, and that's The Duchess Steele. Beauty and the Beast retelling, scarred hero. He's a bit of a Batman. He's a vigilante. Our heroine is a dressmaker who's supposed to provide him with an heir, and then he will leave her alone, and they end up falling for each other. Still one of the books I recommend for people getting into historical romance. Still is sweet and just beautiful. And then the one I picked that I like the least, and y'all, again, no disrespect to this book at all. I think I gave it a 3.5 stars, what I saw. And it is When a Scot Ties the Knot. So I know a lot of people, this may even be their favorite, but the plot was just, okay, I know the plots don't have to make sense in romance, but this one just was kind of cringy for me. This heroine, because she doesn't want to get married and she's very socially awkward, she writes letters to a Captain Mackenzie, and she set up this whole story where, like, they were in love and they were together, and then she even writes that he, like, died in battle so that she can then be like a widower almost, and people will leave her alone for a while. But it turns out Captain Mackenzie is real, and he shows up on her doorstep with her letters, which ended up getting delivered to him because Captain Mackenzie was real. And so they get delivered to him, and he needs her to help save his men, and so he's kind of like coercing her into a marriage. So yeah, it's still really good. Again, I'm telling my least favorite. It doesn't mean I hate it by any means. Sorry, we need a drink of coffee. My allergies have caused me to have a sore throat the last couple days, so I need to lubricate, but we're gonna keep pushing on. Next, someone picked Claire Kingsley, and this is another where, like, this woman has so many books, and I've only read like 12 of them. I still have many to go. I have only read the Baileys and the Miles family. That's all I've read. So I don't have anything else to choose from yet. So I actually have 2 books from the Bailey series that are my favorite and least favorite, but I gave all of these books high ratings because I really liked them. So my favorite book in the series and of hers is Chasing Her Fire. This one's book 5. This one is Logan and Kara. And Kara is best friends with Grace, who is his brother's wife, so his sister-in-law. And Kara is this kind of rich, snooty brat who is staying in Tillicum, and she's very, like, her and Logan hate each other, but they are drunk and they have a one-night stand, and this is a surprise pregnancy between them. And it's like my favorite kind of surprise pregnancy, where she immediately says she's pregnant and is like, I'm gonna take care of my baby, it's fine. And Logan is like, no, I live here too, and I'm gonna be the baby's dad, and I'm gonna be a great dad, so make room in your life for me because I'm here. And I love that. And yeah, I love how they go about deciding whether they're going to be together, if they're just going to co-parent, or like how it's going to go. And in general, Claire Kingsley gives me very low stress levels. So I love this. I smiled the whole way through. The audiobooks for this series are excellent. And then my least favorite in this series, which I gave like a 3.5, but I rounded up to a 4. And I blame part of this on the fact that I didn't start at the beginning of the Bailey series. I started with book 3 because I was part of a live show with Smart Women Read Romance. Juliet was like sick or was busy, and so Jesson was like, could you read this book by 8 p.m. tonight? And I was like, yes ma'am, I can. And so I didn't read the first 2 books. So when I finally got the first 2 books, which are about the same couple, it just was like too little too late, kind of like I didn't want to go back to their angstiness when I had already seen them be happy. So my least favorite in the series was Fighting for Us, which is the second book about Asher and Grace, who Asher, he goes to prison at the end of the first book, which is really more of a novella. It's a quick one. And he is very much, doesn't think he's good enough for Grace when he gets back, and very much fights against being with her. And it was very frustrating. Like, he was frustrating for 75% of this book. So it was just so much angstier than the other ones, and it was also just like, come on, dude, get over it. She's waited for you all this time. Move along. So, still great writing though. Okay, then we have Kennedy Ryan. So this is where you're going to start to see I cheat a little bit, and I have some multiples for my favorites. Because some of these authors, I have more than one 6-star book, and that's how it is. And so I have 2 books for Kennedy. The first is Still. This was one of my favorite books of all time. It was one of my favorite books last year, and so was Real. Because I read these in the same year. I read this one in the beginning, and then I read this one when it came out, and these were both 6-star books for me, so I can't choose. I mean, this one is probably my favorite Kennedy Ryan, but this is really close. But this one probably is. This trilogy about, wow, the name just went out of my head. Shit, Grip and Bristol is heartbreakingly beautiful and wonderful and just everything. And this about Canon and Neva is just glorious. And again, the audiobooks for these are amazing. Now, my least favorite of hers, and this one might be controversial for people, is actually Queen Move, which was one of the first books of hers that I read somehow. Like, I had read this one not long after it came out, and it just didn't vibe with me at all. Like, I couldn't connect with the characters. So I gave this one like a 3-star, and I'm sad about that. But what's her name? I can't remember her name even. This couple just didn't grip me at all, and I was disappointed because I liked the heroine in previous books she was in, and in her own book I just couldn't connect with them. This one was also a second chance romance in a way that was so frustrating for me, that I just didn't vibe. And it's still fantastic writing. It's still Kennedy Ryan, who's gonna knock you off your socks. So then we have Lisa Kleypas. Many people put Lisa Kleypas in, and this is someone that I have 3 favorites for, and I regret nothing. This is my video. I can do what I want. So my very favorite of hers, but it's very difficult to choose, is again The Magic. Absolutely love this. This book has Lady Aline, who is Marcus's sister. If you've read the, this is a prequel to the Wallflower series. You can read it before or you can read it after, because you really only see Marcus in this one. None of the other girls are around yet. But Aline was a daughter of a lord, and John McKenna is a stable boy, and they fall in love when they're young, and John ends up getting chased away by her father. And when he comes back many years later, Aline is still single, and he wants to ruin her. He doesn't really want to ruin her. He's just very much hurting about it. I love it. There's a second tier romance in here that I also love between Aline's sister, I think it's Olivia, and this guy who is an alcoholic rich man. And they talk about alcoholism and the time that they're in, and it breaks me every time. I love it. Then Devil in Disguise. This was one of my favorite books last year. This hero, Keir McRae, is my favorite Kleypas hero. He just is. He's so precious, and this couple is fantastic. I love them so much. And then there is Mine Till Midnight, which I still have a sweet soft spot for the Halloways, and so Cam and Amelia will just always be up there for me. And yeah, this book is just so precious to me. I love it. Now, my least favorite, and I was like, oh shit, how do I pick a least favorite Kleypas? How am I going to do it? I haven't read all of her books, but I'm close to it, actually. I only have, I think, 6 of her books left I haven't read, and I'm very, like, miserly with when I read them because I don't want to be done with her books. I don't ever want to, especially because we don't know when we're getting more. Like, she's, like, dead silent, and I don't like it. I don't know when we're getting another one. But then I remembered that I have read some of her contemporaries, and then I was like, haha, that'll be an easy pick. So I've actually read Christmas Eve at Friday Harbor, which is kind of a novella that starts off the Friday Harbor series, and this was easily a 3-star book. There's hardly any smut in it. It's novella length. It's Christmassy. It just is not what I want from Kleypas. So it was easy to make this my least favorite. Didn't have to pick one of the other ones. All right, we're still going. We're on to the second page now. All right. Okay, I think we're done with this side of books. Have a lot of freaking books down here, y'all. Okay, then someone asked for Maggie Cole. This one was also pretty easy to choose. So my favorite of hers, and this one will be no surprise, is Savage Tracker. This book, I have a signed one. This book is in my top books from last year. Maggie Cole has won me over forever with the type of writing in this. This is a heroine who survived a 20-year abusive marriage, and she's gotten out of it, and now she doesn't know what to do. And Obrecht is a Ivanov, and he is kind of charged with looking out for Selena, and they end up falling for each other. And even though she was in an abusive master-slave relationship, she still has these urges to submit to a dom, and Obrecht is part of the lifestyle, but he doesn't want to be serious. Like, he doesn't want to have the responsibility of being someone's dom, but he agrees to, like, kind of help her find someone who could be her dom, and then they end up falling in love. And the way that they use BDSM and communication and teaching her what her limits can be and what she's allowed, which is anything she fucking wants, she's allowed, is beautiful. It's freaking fantastic, and it was a masterpiece. And then my least favorite one is actually the book right before that, and it's Vicious Protector. So the reason, I have a couple reasons why this is my least favorite. Number one, by the time we got to this book, and this happens in a lot of her books, like, it is, in my opinion, one of the few downsides of this series as a whole, is that she does a lot of books that are, like, taking place on top of each other. Specifically, like, the first 4 books of this series. I mean, even some of Savage Tracker, but Savage Tracker, the couple is more isolated because they live in this, like, this condo building, and so we don't see as much overlap with everything else. The last 4, the first 4 books in the series, we, like, backtrack for each one. Like, for each one, we, like, backtrack to meet everything, and we have to relive scenes from people's point of view. By the time we get to this book, there is a certain specific scene that I've literally read 6 times, because even within its own book, we see it from the perspective of the 2 characters. So I was banging my heads against the wall by that time. Like, I really was. I say it in my review, which I read an arc of all these books, so I was trying to be, like, you know, judicious about it, but I was like, Maggie, you have repeated these scenes ad nauseum. I don't need to know what every person in the room is thinking when it happens. Like, we've seen it already. We know. And also, the same dynamic between the hero and the heroine. The heroine is an outsider of the mob, the hero is inside, and, like, the Ivanovs don't share anything. And I'm like, well, that's not fucking true, because in the last 3 books, the heroes have shared with their heroine. So to then have the same conflict between them, where the heroine can't trust him, and I think this one is Skylar and Adrian, to have that again, I was banging my head against the wall. So the writing's still strong. She still writes a great relationship. There was just so many repetitive things between relationship beats as well as scenes that I was just like, girl, I'm done for now, you know? But I still love her books. I still love her writing. Maggie, I can't wait to see what she does next. She has some great plans coming soon. But yeah, this was tough. Like, that was tough for me. All right, next, Sam Mariano. I'm like giving people a few seconds to guess, even though y'all know it's untouchable. Untouchable. So Sam is someone as well that I have read almost all of her books. There are only 2 or 3 that I haven't read. There's a duet I haven't read yet because it's one of her very older ones. And then there's a couple books she's written like with authors that I haven't read yet. So I can honestly like pick from these. Untouchable, it's one of my favorite books ever. I've talked about it in a lot of recent videos, so I won't do it again. This is, I mean, currently it's not one of the darkest books I've read, but at the time it was one of the darkest books I read, having non-con and then having that couple be the couple at the end. It was one of the first books I read that the first interaction between the hero and the heroine is an assault, is a rape in a sense. And I was like, okay, well that can't be the hero. And then I was like, but it is the hero. It's fantastic, and viewer after viewer has said they agree with me, so there's that. Now, for my least favorite, this one was also kind of easy to choose because, like, this book just, like, didn't work for me at all. And it was, ooh, there's a squirrel. It was Family Ties. This is book 4 in her, what's the family name? Matteo, what's the family name? Morelli, in the Morelli family, sorry. Woo! And this one was about the sister, Francesca, and I can't remember the hero's name, and I just didn't care about Francesca. There was a lot of stuff brewing between Matteo and Mia and Meg, and so this one I was just like, wow, I don't care about this couple. We could be done with this now. That'd be great. Thanks. Moving right along. And so it doesn't have the same spark that everything else does. So it just didn't work for me. But I've liked quite a few of her other books. So there you go. All right, Sophie. All right. You guys are trying to get me in trouble with this, but that's okay. This one I have 2 favorites. Honestly, I could pick 5 or 6, but I'm going with some of my 6-star books from last year. So we have The Bully, which is book 3 in the Kingmakers. You know, I love Dean and Kat. I love this redemption story. This is Draco Malfoy porn. This is my signed copy, which I have to be careful with because the cover is getting really weak. I'm going to need to like protect it somehow. And Sophie signed this one for me. It's beautiful. But yeah, this one is, yeah, it's a redemption story. It's beautiful. Sorry, we don't got to ram about it. And my absolute favorite one is Broken Vow. This is a cowboy and a mafia lawyer, and I love it. I love it. I will lay down and die for Raylan and Riona. I love them so much. Freaking fantastic. Freaking fantastic. They're brilliant. And then my least favorite is also pretty easy. It's the CEO of Christo, which is getting a new name. I can't remember the new name is going to be, and it's getting a new cover. She currently has it in an anthology right now. But this is a Count of Monte Cristo retelling. It was her, like, one of her first books. The mystery is really good, but it's very low spice, and it actually is the first time she did 3 POVs. One of them is the villain POV, which is interesting. And yeah, if you really love the Count of Monte Cristo, like, this is great. It just wasn't the writing I was used to from her. I was reading this one for the deep dive video that I did on Sophie, which has gotten many views at this point. And I absolutely love her books. And this was still a fun time. It just was, I rated this one like a 3.5. But she doesn't have much in the way of duds, you know? All right. Diana Gabaldon is next. So I thought about cheating at this and saying one of my least favorite was one of her like nonfiction things she did, but I've actually ranked the Outlander books before. I did a video that came out right before season 6 came out. So I just looked back at my video to decide. So my favorite book in the series as of now is Drums of Autumn. I love the themes of this book. I love all of the reunions. It just hits my heart when Jamie gets to meet his daughter, who he never thought he would see, and when everybody ends up in the past together, even going through all the shit they have to go through to get there. I love it. So this is my favorite in the Outlander series, but it's a tight race, y'all. It's a tight race, but this is my favorite. And then my least favorite, this one was harder to choose, and when I did my list, I even say, like, there isn't a book in the series that I actively dislike. There's just ones that were like either harder to read or were maybe a little more like dull for me at the time. And for me, that one is Dragonfly and Amber. Part of it is that this book starts with the time jump, and everything we're reading in this book is leading up to how they are separated from each other, which is never a great feeling to be reading, you know what I mean? But the writing is still amazing, and there's some beautiful parts to this. There's some gut-wrenching scenes. So this one is splitting my babies for sure. And they're all 5 or 6 star books for me. Like, they're all just epic reads. But in enjoyment level, if we go to that, Dragonfly and Amber is probably the least. Lorraine Heath. So I was having trouble finding my book, so I was looking for her, so I'll have to use some pictures. So I have 2 favorites for her. So my very favorite of hers, which again, I don't know where I put it. I know I must have used it in a video recently, and maybe that's why I can't find it anywhere. But I gave this book 6 stars last year, and it was Midnight Pleasures with a Scoundrel. This book has an epic twist. It does. It's great. This one has a mystery. There's a murder that needs solving, and there is a certain man who's put on the case, and he ends up falling for the main suspect, and I loved it. The other one that's a favorite actually has kind of a similar twist, so maybe that's a little bit of a spoiler for Midnight Scoundrels, but there is The Earl Takes All, which is a well-known book. This one has the gorilla death in it, and it has Edward and goes undercover as his brother when his brother dies on a trip in Africa, and he pretends to be his brother, who is the Earl, because the heroine is pregnant and he doesn't want her to lose the baby, so he pretends to be him, and now he's locked into this where he'll pretend to be his brother until he dies, or else, you know, never get to be with the woman that he really loves. So I don't know, I just love it. The angst, the secrets. No one does it like Lorraine Heath, okay? No one does. Now, my least favorite, this is a more recent one I've read, and it's actually Once More My Darling Rogue. I was so pissed at the hero in this one. I really was. I ranted about this a lot. And I know for some people this one's really fun because it's like kind of based off of a movie, like it's a retelling of like a movie, which I can't remember the movie's name, but people really love it. And for me, it didn't work. Like, it didn't work for me because this has amnesia in it, and the things that the hero does and says and the way he treats the heroine while she has amnesia, I just wouldn't forgive it. Like, I know she was a bitch to him. That's his reasoning. But when we find out her history and what she's been through, it made him almost irredeemable for me. The fact that, yeah, she was bitchy, but guess what she was living through? And so you thought it was okay to treat her like a maid and to seduce her and like ruin her because you thought she was a bitch, was just the most paper thin reasoning that I've ever read. And I was actually kind of disappointed in Lorraine Heath how she did that. Like, it didn't work. This was one I actively disliked, and I was sad about it because I usually don't actively dislike anything of hers, but it did work for me. So okay, then someone said Lydia Michaels, who I've been reading a lot of lately. So I want to say Irish Rogue, which I just read recently, and in my weekly wrap-up, I went very in-depth about this. This is a virgin heroine and the town, like, man whore, and I love their story. Like, I really, really loved it. I just read it. It was beautiful. But one of my very first, I believe it was my first Lydia Michaels. This has since gotten a new cover, and I really need to get a new copy of it. But it's Breaking Perfect. This is a polyamorous relationship, and it's a married couple who the hero, like the husband's ex-lover, comes back into their lives and gets invited into their marriage. There's some power dynamics there. The heroine has OCD in like a very serious way, and the new hero coming into this relationship actually has some tools that help her with her OCD in certain ways. And this was one of the first MMFs that I ever read. It was the first MMF where the couple was married first. And yeah, I really love it. The one I like the least, and this one I don't have tons of hate why, is Love Me Nots. This one is part of Jasper Falls, and it's a novella length one, and it just didn't have enough meat to the story for me. I also didn't really care about Perrin, who's like the sister of one of the characters from a different book, and I just didn't really connect with her, and this romance was like an insta-love to the max, and it just didn't really jive with some of the other books that Lydia has put out. So nothing to hate about it, but it just didn't work. Okay, then this is another author that her books are like packed very far away, so I didn't grab them, but Kerrigan Byrne, and I have two favorites of hers. I have The Highwayman, which is the first Kerrigan Byrne that I ever read. Absolutely adored this. This is a second chance romance, childhood lovers. The hero is now like a London overlord, a crime overlord. The heroine actually works for the police. It's a virgin hero. It's a Scottish romance, like, brilliant. Loved it, absolutely love it, highly recommend. And then All Scott and Bothered, which is a book from the Red Rogues, or it's also called The Devil You Know series. And I just love this couple. It's a, I think he's like a judge or like a barrister or something, and the heroine is a plus size woman, and she's been left this like gaming hell and / like brothel by a benefactor that she doesn't know. And the reason why our hero is looking into her is because it's rumored that this place is being used to sex traffic children, and she's like, whoa, I just got given this place like last week, I don't know what's going on. And then my least favorite is probably some of the paranormal novellas I read. So I put To Seduce a Highlander. This I think is the Berserkers. There's nothing wrong with these. They're a set of like, she has 3 different bind-ups that each have 3 different short stories. There's Berserkers and Banshees and like something else, and they're fine, they're fun, great to read around Halloween, but not as gut-wrenching as some of her other ones. Then we have Kay Webster, and I of course am picking The Wild, which is a total fucked up book. It is supposed incest. It's uncomfortable. It will make people uncomfortable. It's funny, it was coming up on TikTok again, and like people saying how like taboo and gross it is, and I'm like, yeah, but it still messes with my head and I like it too much. So this is my special edition copy. I got a signed copy from her website, and I love the fucked upness of this. But it's a girl and her dad who get trapped in the wilderness and live there together in ways. But I did use supposed incest. No spoilers, but I think that's a spoiler, I guess. It's still fucked up either way. And then my least favorite of hers is one of her short taboo books, which is called Coach Long. I don't remember a ton about it, but when I went through my ratings, I'd given this one the lowest rating. It was one of her quickies, and it was hot, and it was a coach and a student. I've just read better. And then the last author that I will mention, see, we're already at like 45 minutes with this, is Cora Reilly. I think it won't be a surprise with this one at all, but my favorite book by Cora Reilly, and it will be forever, is Twisted Emotions. This book is an arranged marriage between Chiara and Nino. Chiara was raped by her uncle when she was young, and she's been broken by this. And when she's going to be used to start an alliance with the Las Vegas Camorra, she is terrified. She's sure her husband's going to realize she's not a virgin, and then he's going to kill her, and it's going to be awful. And Nino, who is neurodivergent, finds out about this and is just like, no, I'm going to give them blood on the sheets. I'm going to give them your uncle's blood, because we don't put up with child fuckers around here. And they do. They slay him on their marriage bed, and it's amazing. Also then they have this beautiful relationship where they slowly work towards helping her heal, and it doesn't all happen in one book. There's actually another book about this couple where they're working through their like issues together. They both do have issues. It isn't just her having trauma. He has trauma too. And I love it. It's fantastic, which is why it makes me so sad that my least favorite book by Cora Reilly is By Sin I Rise, Part 1. I never read Part 2 because Part 1 pissed me off so much. Like, I really, really disliked this book. This is the first book in like the second generation. So it's Luca's daughter, and then the hero, Maddox, is this like son of a biker gang that Luca killed, and she gets kidnapped by this biker gang and stuff. And I just was so disappointed, and I really think she should either leave the mafia or she should go back to the dark mafia that she was writing before. So as I've said, like, this will always be one of my favorite books. This book and Twisted Pride, they will always be some of my favorite books. I will never hesitate to recommend them. I even think her Born in Blood, they are a fun starter series for people. They just are. But her writing is not the same anymore. And I have many theories about that and all of it, but this is the fave. So, all right, there we go. Let me know if you thought this was a fun idea. You should do this idea if you like it. You don't need people to recommend them to you. You could just pick your favorite authors and do your favorite and least favorite. I had over 50 different people respond, and I had like over 30 different authors to go through, so I just had to pick some because you can tell this is already super long. So thank you so much for watching this. I really appreciate it. Thank you to my patrons and channel members who support me every day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.